Welcome back to Milty Lightning Talks. My name is Beth Shook. I'm a product engineer with Milty, and I'll be giving a brief introduction to static site building with Jekyll, a quick and dirty approach to creating a simple, flexible website. In order to talk about static site generators, I want to be clear about what a static site is exactly. If you started building websites as a kid in the 90s, as I did, you maybe learned some basic HTML, signed up for a GeoCities account, and built a handful of pages dedicated to your favorite Backstreet Boy or something. In my case, it was my cats. And that was a static website in its simplest form, as opposed to a CMS like WordPress, which we're fond of here at Nulty. With a static website, there's no database, there's no server-side scripting. All of the pages are ready to go right away, and all visitors see, for the most part, the same content. And now, of course, we have CSS. So static sites today are usually built in HTML and CSS. Now, because there is no database or dynamic content, static sites can be rather cumbersome to update or make changes to, and so they're best suited for smaller to medium-sized projects. Now, developers have worked to address this maintenance issue, and so now we have what are called static site generators. These are basically any kind of software that receives data, content, and templates, and then generates a folder of static pages and assets. Through templating, you can automate what used to be so tedious about static sites. So if you want to make a change to the site footer, for instance, you don't need to edit the footer separately on every page. You can just update the footer template part. There are a ton of static site generators out there, so I have just listed a few of the most popular here. We have Jekyll, which is built in Ruby. There's Gatsby, which is based in React and GraphQL and can pull data from other sources like WordPress. There's Hugo, which is built around Google's Go programming language. And there are Next and Next, which are separate generators, but both offer the option of some server-rendered content. Now, it goes without saying that every project has different needs, and each of these site generators has its set of pros and cons. Some require knowledge of a particular programming language or framework, and some can generate sites that behave more like web applications or can pull data from external sources like Gatsby. But we only have time to zoom in on one today. So why might you use Jekyll to build your static website? Well, in my case, I was recently looking for a way to get a small project up and running quickly. At Nulty, we do a lot of WordPress and React development, but I felt like a CMS or a web application would be sort of overkill for what I wanted to do. And so I started looking into these various static site generators. And Jekyll stood out to me for a number of reasons. For one, it's really easy to get up and running. All you need is a Ruby development environment, and from there you can simply run these commands and Jekyll generates your project. And currently it also comes prepackaged with a gem-based theme. Jekyll's also quite easy to learn, and I should note that as with a number of these site generators, you don't necessarily need to know the programming language it's based on, which is in this case Ruby, unless you want to go deeper into the weeds and build plugins and that kind of thing. To create a basic Jekyll site, all you'll need is a text editor and some basic knowledge of a markup language like Markdown. It'll also help to learn the basics of Liquid, which is the templating language that Jekyll uses. But all of this is really well documented and I think fairly easy to pick up as you go. Jekyll is also blog aware. That means it is already set up to behave as a blog with an archive and distinguish pages from posts. But instead of living in a database, as blog posts would in WordPress, your posts are just stored as individual Markdown files. Now, another benefit of Jekyll is that it was created by one of the GitHub co-founders, Tom Preston Werner, and in part for that reason, it has great brand recognition, and it's become among the most popular, if not the most popular, static site generator in recent years. This relationship with GitHub also means that you can serve your Jekyll site for free directly from your GitHub repo using GitHub Pages, which is pretty cool. And finally, Jekyll has great documentation and an active community, and that's always a plus when you're getting started with an unfamiliar tool. So once you initiate a Jekyll project, you're going to see a structure like this one, and I just want to point out some key components. There's a folder for posts, as I mentioned. There's a site directory, which contains all of the generated HTML and CSS files that will be served to the visitor. There are markdown files representing the pages of the site. And then there's this file, config.yaml. This is where you're going to configure the more or less permanent elements of your site, such as the title, the base URL, and any themes or plugins. You might also have SAS files or layout templates visible in the project. More recently, when you generate a Jekyll project, it's going to install a gem-based theme, and so none of those assets will be visible here. But you can still find the file path for those SAS files and then overwrite them with your own code. So moving over to the content side, to create a post or page, whether you're a developer or not, you're probably going to need to learn a bit of new syntax. And here we're looking at a post. Now you'll notice that the title of the post file name begins with the date, and that is required in Jekyll. Posts also have to begin with a front matter block, and that's the sort of block of code you're seeing at the top of the code editor. That's basically a chunk of code written in YAML, and it's used to set variables for the page. So here I've set a layout template, a title, and some other metadata. Beneath the front matter, you'll see the content of the post, and you'll notice syntax from two different languages. I'm adding some formatting to the text using Markdown, like the hashes that denote headings. You'll also notice some curly braces, which come from Liquid, the templating language I mentioned before. Here I have both Liquid output markup, which is within double curly braces, and I have Liquid tags, which are used for logic, and those are the curly braces with percent signs. And this is a look at the output of that blog post. You can see the results of the Markdown formatting and the templating variables and logic. And it's really as simple as that. From here, you can customize your own layouts and themes, learn to write more complex expressions with Liquid markup, or you could just keep it really simple and publish a bare bones blog to GitHub pages. I've also included a little peek at Jekyll's showcase page here, which I encourage everyone to check out. There's some pretty cool and sophisticated projects that give you an idea of what's possible using this site generator. And I've also included some reading on the topic that I found helpful. I hope this brief overview inspires you to perhaps build your own static Jekyll site, whether you're a developer or not. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you at the next Multi Lightning Talk.